Değerli katılımcılar,
Distinguished participants, welcome. Today, we are glad that you didn't leave us alone. My name is Rahime Gökboğa. I am the director of Spastic Children of Turkey Foundation. I have my master's degree in special training, and I have been continuing with my studies with the parents and the special needed the children with special needs. And taking this opportunity, I would like to congratulate your day. And today we will be talking about the inclusion education problems experience. And we are in a world of education where we have the people change, however, we have the problems all the time the same, and we try to find out the solutions for the problems. Of course, without detecting the solution problems, we cannot find the solutions, and the surveys show us that we have the regulations are inclusive, and our problem is operational and systematic because of the applications. And here we will be hearing the problems from Miss Ayşe Tuğba Ceyhun. I would like to introduce her to you, Dr. Ayşe Tuğba Ceyhun. She is a faculty member in Biruni University in the special training, special education, and she has accomplished her training in Gazi University, and she worked as a teacher for the disabled children, mental disabled children. And she also had the master's degree in Gazi University from the Department of Mental Disabled Children, and also she has the PhD degree in the field of autism spectrum disorder children. And she has got a master's degree, and as well as she has classes in master's classes as well as PhD classes, and she's a facilitator. She is the first one who worked in shadow pilot implementation of shadowing education, and currently in Biruni University she is opening in facilitator programs. And now I would like to leave the floor to her. So distinguished Dr. Miss Ayşe Tuğba, please have the say, and thank you very much for your introduction. And today we will talk about the inclusion problems in inclusion education problems, and I think that you have been talking about this for 2 days, and I am a person working on the field as an academician, and also I am a researcher as well. And years ago I was an inclusion teacher, and I hope that I will be contributing to the audience, and afterwards we will have the Q&A session. And of course, the inclusion and integration concepts are confused, and they are frequently confused. Actually, the integration is an application which is required by the international agreements. However, we're not at that level yet. For that reason, we're just talking about the dimension of inclusion. So it's an approach, the inclusion is an approach which requires the children with special need to adapt the normal school regulations. So if I just show you as a table, we have the inclusion classes, but in the integration, we see that every school is an inclusion school. And in inclusion, we have the guest student, and in the integration, we have the class student. And in the inclusion, we have the student with the different performance as per the different performance levels. However, we have that the education is as per the level of the performance, and in the inclusion we have that the student has to adapt with the school, has to adapt the school. However, in the integration, the school has to adapt to the student, and also we have the inclusion responsibility fall on the classroom teacher and as well as the support person professional. However, we see that the responsibility is in the school as well as in the near environment, in the integrations education. And if we're to talk about the inclusion, first of all, we have to talk about the falls first. And there are three pillars. This is the physical inclusion. As we know, this is it means that physically the student, the special need, this child with special need is within the classroom. And in the social inclusion, what happens is that the student becomes a member of the school or the class, and the educational inclusion, we see that the child with special need is within the class curriculum through the special education or individual educational program. And we know that there are problems within the inclusion education. And I would like to talk about some positive developments before I talk about the problems. I first would like to talk about the positives, afterwards the negatives. And when we look into the history, we see that the regulations and legislations are within favor of the student, the inclusion student. So we are protecting these students, and the special education teachers in the faculty where I work, we know so they can serve in the inclusion schools. So this is really great because they serve in the support classrooms, and then they can contribute to the inclusion students, and they can be in cooperation with the classroom teachers. And another positive thing is that, as mentioned by Ms. Rahime, it is about the facilitator, and I will be talking about it more. And it is the shadow educator. So they are named as professionals. So the assistant personnel are now within our country as well. And also there is a support by the state. We have the awareness activities and the European Union projects which support this project as well. So there are many of them, and this is a good aspect in favor of our country. And also we know that there are some studies ongoing regarding the curriculum and the school models regarding the application of the best practices, and NGOs, university, ministry, cooperations are ongoing, and of course physical conditions are better, especially the municipality affairs are better, and accordingly we have a better environment. And apart from this, in the inclusion model, inclusion education model, we see that there is much better social adoption, and as well as respect to the differences. And we know that there is a community acceptance, and this is much better, and compliance is better. And within the history, these are good aspects and positive developments which we have seen so far. Now, let's come to the frequent problems we come across. We have just mentioned regulation, and we just talked about the legal improvements, and we just talked about some regulations which provides an equality in education, but there are some problems in application, especially in terms of description, placement, and also providing the support services. And apart from that, in our country, we have the 4+4+4 education model, which brings an orientation problem with itself. So what happens is that while the student tries to adapt and comply with the first school, then in the second stage, there's a problem of adaptation to the next school. And we have this insufficiency of the classroom teachers. And this is one of the greatest problems of our country, which is experienced by our country. And also the stakeholders of the inclusion have got, are deficient in experience. Even the cafeteria personnel, for example, should be knowledgeable and should have knowledge about the inclusion training, inclusion education, so that this would be successful. And there are certain problems experienced in this field as well. There are also problems of application of education in this regard. So, of course, our target is to ensure the social accomplishment or compliance, but however, we have the measuring and evaluation and also the material support technology usage should also should exist in this the implementation of the education. However, we lack these, and also we have the problems of measurement and evaluations, and also there are some problems when there is the transition to the next stage. For example, there are the anxieties regarding employment. We can take the student to a certain up to a certain level, but whether the student will have a certain occupation or not. So, for example, occupational schools, whether they will provide an opportunity or not, these are also problems. And there are some expectations of the family and teachers which are not in line with the inclusion education. And the researchers show that there is this learned problem or despair, helplessness. So what happens is that there might be a high expectation, and if it's not met, there is a big despair or a disappointment. So this is actually related to the acceptance of this process. So there might be the social inclusion or social compliance problems of the students with these special need people. So what happens is that the community or the peers do not have these problems or do not know about these special needs. So for that reason, this happens not only in our country as well as in all over the world. We can come across with such problems. And also once again, the limitation of the community or social acceptance. So the attitudes of the other students as well as families are really problems if they are negative. And also there are the problems of the motivation of the teachers. It's really hard to work with the special need children. So for that reason, what happens is that this teacher would be working in an atmosphere or environment with with a child with special need as well as with a normal child. So for that reason, the motivation problems of the teachers should be solved, and also the physical characteristics and resources of the schools are not enough, and this is also one of the frequent problems that we come across. And also there are these attitudes related to the individual differences. It's about the tolerance and pitying, empathy, level of empathy, and also the way of raising the children by the families. These are all problems related to discipline, for example, and this may also make emerge these negativities. And also there are some problems of the child with special need related to their reactions that show in unexpected conditions like impatience, anger, tantrums, and also the violation of rights of the others. And these are also problems which hinder the success and triumph of the inclusion education. I just wanted to wrap up them as a whole, because these problems affect the environment within the classroom directly or indirectly. Within the time I have been allocated, I just would like to share with you the perspective of the teachers. So first I wanted to talk about the general problems, and then afterwards I would like to talk about the problems of or the perspectives of the teachers which are compiled from Turkey. Now, the teachers have got two classes of or two types of duties, but we have the branch teachers. First of all, we have the guides or classroom teachers, and we know that the guides, what do they have their duty to ensure the cooperation with the family, teachers, and other parties, and also provides information regarding the development. And also this classroom teacher has got duties as making an evaluation regarding the social acceptance in the classroom, as well as applying the individual education program. What happens is that sometimes these both teachers may blame each other, but we have to underline that both of them are as important as each other. So when we look into the problems of the teacher's experience, the most frequent one is actually is related to the education and training. We know that there is this unit of individual education program development, and there are these problems experienced in this, and these are related to the education. And also there are the problems of these support services, and there are also problems among the teachers, as well as problems with the cooperation with the school management, and as well as cooperation with the family, and as well as the problems regarding the teachers in terms of their occupational competency, professional competency. And especially I would like to talk about the surveys carried out in Turkey related to these teachers in Turkey. And so there are some common features that have emerged. So we have just talked about the preparation of the individualized educational problems. We know that the teachers do not have enough information about them, and we know that the meetings to be done about the individualized educational programs, these are not enough. These meetings are not programs, and we know that the guides have time problems. They cannot allocate time enough. And also while these teachers prepare these IEPs, the individualized education programs, they have some challenges. Apart from this, the principals of the schools, and as well as they are not enough or insufficient in terms of providing a presidency or serving as a president for these individualized and education programs. What happens is that only the guide teachers or guides are held responsible in terms of legal responsibilities or problems, and as well as development of the individualized educational plans. Only the guide teachers are held as responsible. And related to the problems of students, we know that the inclusion students are not distributed evenly in the classrooms, and this we have come across in the surveys. And also we see that the students whose preparedness for inclusion is not enough are distributed in the classes. And also there and also in some of the classes there are some students with different diagnoses, and they are within the class and they are named as inclusion students. And also there are problems related to the support services, and one of the most frequent one is that RAMs. And the RAMs do not provide enough information regarding the student. They do not give information to the guides as well as to the families. And between the RAM and school, we see that there is limited cooperation. And also within the description of the educational description, we see that there are certain inconveniences. As a result, we see that the parents and the inclusion students are victimized. And we see that within certain surveys, so it is such a system that it is they are dependent on each other. It's like dominoes. It's like domino play game. So RAM is really important here. So it serves for many things, providing consultancy, providing support, and so many things. So for that reason, so the teachers say that they cannot get enough support and they do not have support education. Classrooms are not enough either. So what happens is that in some schools there might be some teachers who are not appointed under certain title, and however these teachers can be referred to the required class. And also another problem or difficulty is that it's about the families, because families are very important, and it's our first stakeholder and partner. So the more we have healthy cooperation with family, the more we are successful in education of the students, and this inclusion is within this process. So for that reason, however, in the service carry that we see that there are problems among the teachers, families, and students, or it may be the case that the families do not have enough information about their children, or they did not want to be involved in the process. So for that reason, since they could not come up with, they didn't reach this process, we cannot have success provided that we do not cooperate with the families. And if there are some intervention programs, work together with the families, and if these programs are not continued within home, we cannot ensure this stability. And after after diagnosis of the children, we see that the families are made lonely. So for that reason, they do not get any support from the environment. So it is not only in the dimension of teacher, it's also important to cooperate with the families in order to be able to solve the problems. So let's say